Ukrainian officials say Russia unleashed a missile barrage on Ukraine, reaching areas far from the front lines. This, as a top aide to President Zelensky tells ABC News, the conflict is now in a decisive phase. Foreign correspondent Tom Burridge is in Kyiv, Ukraine, with more. Tom, what do Ukrainian officials mean when they call this a decisive phase?
Well, Diane, the Ukrainians have a window, and that window is the summer, effectively. When the fall comes, the rains will arrive and the ground will soften. Any military offensive actions, any movement by armoured vehicles is way harder once the ground softens. So the Ukrainians know they have to take advantage of the summer. They want to avoid a stalemate in this war. They believe, with their Western partners, that if Russian army just sits on a static front line, it will only be a matter of time until Russia once again attacks. And therefore, the Ukrainians believe that they have to capitalize on the momentum that they've been building over the last few weeks and months. But the reality on the ground is that the counteroffensive right now is incredibly slow. It's incredibly tough. The Ukrainians are making very small gains in very small areas of the front lines, and the cost is high. The casualties we're picking up on, we don't have official figures, but anecdotally, the casualties, the number of soldiers being injured in particular, is very, very high. Diane?
Now, Tom, Ukraine says drones hit several grain storage sites in the south. Now the country's accusing Russia of trying to block food exports. What's the latest on the extent of the damage, and could this affect the global food supply?
It could definitely affect the global food supply, or really global food prices, to be precise, Diane, because before the war, Ukraine was producing many important food export substances. For example, about half of the world's sunflower oil was produced in Ukraine before the war. Now, Ukraine has basically been trying to get some of those vital food exports, which really go to predominantly countries in Africa and the Middle East. But what Russia has done is basically unilaterally pulled out of a deal. We've seen extensive damage from repeated strikes by the Russians on these ports, and it's a precarious situation. Diane?
So what's the latest on the Ukrainian counteroffensive?
The counteroffensive is going slowly for the Ukrainians, and I think it's hard to sort of read exactly whether or not it is succeeding or failing. I don't think we can kind of put those labels precisely on the counteroffensive right now. The Ukrainians do have all that military equipment, but they've been losing some of it. They have taken significant losses in offensive operations. The very early phase of the counteroffensive did not go well. We saw evidence that the Ukrainians were knocked back in places. We've been hearing first-hand accounts. For example, we've been speaking to a guy from Alaska who's over here fighting for the Ukrainians. His unit came under fire. He nearly died. They were badly injured, and those sort of stories are not rare at the moment. The Ukrainians are struggling to make the big breakthrough. It could take more time. They're still hopeful, and they are still pressing the United States and their allies for more military aid, more support to try and get through those minefields. An official telling me they have a fraction of the demining equipment they need. Diane?
Tom Burridge in Kyiv, Ukraine. Tom, thank you.